I want to start with something very interesting, something I already knew. I knew in my gut. I knew in my gut, as I'll explain after you listen to this. This is his fellow Harry Enton, the CNN chief data analyst. This guy makes boring polls sound exciting, fabulous, incredible. They're lucky to have him. I think he's the only guy over there worth having, other than the conservative, and I don't mean to be rude, whose name I can't remember. What is his name? Scott Jennings. Sorry there, Scott. I want you to listen to Harry Enton. This is very important to you, I'm sure. CNN chief data analyst. Cut 17, go.
And overall, I feel like there's more support for Donald Trump's positions than is comically acknowledged. Oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, look at this. 79% of adults agree on that. They agree with Donald Trump. Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. 83% of Republicans, 79% of independents, 79% of Democrats. When you get 79% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans agreeing on anything, you know that that position is the very clear majority in this country. And so the American public is with Donald Trump. They definitely oppose Iran getting nuclear weapons.
So this is a nuance here, but, Trump and Netanyahu both arguing that Iran is close to being capable of making a nuclear weapon. If that is the case, what is the feeling of Americans as to whether the United States should get involved in this conflict?
Right. If you buy Donald Trump's theory of the case, and I think that's important to note, this is polling from April. If Iran's trying to make a nuclear weapon, look at this. Overall, you get the slight plurality. I mean, it's within the margin of error, but the slight plurality of Americans actually favor U.S. airstrikes compared to 47% opposing it. Now, here's the other nugget I'll note, right? There's been a lot of talk online and on social media and in podcasts of a divide within the Republican ranks. But here on this question, if Iran's trying to make a nuclear weapon, look at that. 69% of Republicans, the clear vast majority of Republicans, favor U.S. airstrikes on Iran, on their nuclear facilities. But there is this substantial minority, 27%, who oppose such an idea. So it's not surprising you're hearing those other voices besides Donald Trump out there. There are plenty of them in the Republican ranks who oppose the U.S. striking Iran if they're trying to make a nuclear weapon. But the clear majority of Republicans are with Donald Trump. If, in fact, Iran is trying to make nuclear weapons, they do, in fact, potentially favor U.S. airstrikes. So
to cut through all this, and he does a tremendous job, 69% of Americans, so 69% of Republicans, 7 out of 10 Republicans believe that the U.S. should hit our bombers, Iran's nuclear sites. 70%, 69%. And in terms of making sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons, incredible. 83% of Republicans, 79% of Democrats, 79% of independents. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, the isolationists, I've been telling you this for week after week after week. It's a small cabal. That's what it is. They have platforms. Then those platforms, when they make their outrageous statements and do their outrageous things, they are cycled through entities like Mediaite and the Drudge Report and so forth and so on to try and give them a voice. Why? Because they want you to believe that the Republican Party is like the Democrat Party when it comes to national security, when it comes to taking out nuclear warheads, or potentially when it comes to Israel. It's all a lie, as again I've been trying to say. Now, this battle over the last month with me and the isolationists has exposed them. They're feckless. They're paper tigers. That's what they are. And then they turn on Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump turns on them. And then they have a problem. A big problem. But red-blooded Americans are not isolationists, appeasers, pacifists. We're people with common sense. People who believe you look at a situation, you figure out who the good guys are and the bad guys are. If you can help, we help. It's not about a forever war. It's not about World War III. The American people aren't buying any of this crap. And they know Iran. We know Iran. They've been with us for 47 years, this regime. They've killed Americans, American soldiers. They've tried to assassinate our president. What's getting interesting now, you might recall a couple of weeks ago, ladies and gentlemen, when I was dealing with Katarlson, who really is a paper tiger, absolute lightweight, and his following is an inch deep. When I was dealing with him, you'll notice that Politico Rachel Bade come to his defense. Then the Independent came to his defense. Then Mediocreite came to his defense. Then the Daily Bestiality came to his defense. Then the Huffington all these outlier media entrails. Same left-wing ideologues, same Democrat mouthpieces and so forth and so on in terms of their mindset. They question the intelligence about the nuclear sites. They question the intelligence about the attempts to assassinate Donald Trump. We actually have a case at the Department of Justice. I believe it was started in the Biden administration. So just like Biden isn't as dumb as he sounds and seems and walks and talks. No. So the same media and their entrails, except this time with the isolationists, want you to believe Iran's not a threat. They don't have nukes. Look at them. What exactly is Israel bombing? Civilian energy sites? We all know. We see it. We hear it, just like we did with Biden, just like we did with the Hunter laptop. They're pulling the same thing, except this time they have the isolationists, almost as a fifth column, in this country, joining with them. They're ideological. They're ideological knuckleheads. We're going to have a guest on in the second hour who's going to explain what their surveys found. Very thorough, very comprehensive surveys, very similar to the CNN poll, very similar. Donald Trump's position has been known from day one. We should be supporting what he's trying to do now. We should be supporting the Prime Minister of Israel. We should be supporting the Israeli military. We should be supporting our military. We should encourage them to work as closely together as possible to wipe out this enemy, their nuclear weapons, in which they want to kill us. That's the bottom line. I understand why Tlaib and Omar and AOC and Sanders and the rest of the Marxist Islamists are not with us. But these people who've turned on us, these isolationists with their podcasts and their subscription services and all the rest, hell to them. When the rubber hit the road, they were on the side of the enemy. They'll say they're not, but they are. They're on the side of Tlaib. They're on the side of Bernie Sanders. They sound like Bernie Sanders. And I don't want to hear this stuff. I guess we will, but I don't want to hear it. I support Israel, but I oppose war. Well, good for you. The problem for Israel is they're under attack constantly on all sides. So you may oppose war sitting here in the United States. That's a wonderful thing. But when you're under attack in direct ways and terrorist ways and other ways, and you have been for 47 years by the same primitive, barbarian, 7th century Islamists, you can't just preach. I support Israel, but I oppose war. I see General Michael Flynn. General Michael Flynn has made the point. I'm against stupid wars, but I'm not necessarily against war. And when the state of Israel is under attack, directly and indirectly, I support, if necessary, a war to stop it. But 80% of the American people, 83%, agree with you and me and the president. 83%. And 69% of Republicans believe that the United States should participate in blowing out these nuclear sites. Completely different than what you've been hearing on cable, completely different than what you've been hearing from podcasters, many of them, some on conservative talk radio. Again, I will tell you for the 5,000th time, Rush always told me, respect your audience. Respect their intelligence. When I come behind here, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to the entrails. I'm not talking to the isolation. I'm talking to you. And I give you the truth. I give you the information I have. You don't necessarily have to agree with me. That's okay. That's not the point. But I'll give you the best information I have. That's not what you get in American media. That's not what you get from Mediaite and the Drudge Report, Politico and Axios. Axios is the favorite leaking point of the isolationists who side with Hamas in some instances, but clearly side with the Iranian government. You can't say, no, we can't use military action, or we can't back up the Israelis who are using military action to take out the nuclear weapons there, and then say you're for Israel, but you're not for Iran. No, you're for Iran. It's a practical matter. Putting aside words, as a practical matter, you're for Iran. Just have the guts to say so. Just have the guts to say so. Now, Ted Cruz was a great man, great patriot. I've known him for decades. What you see is what you get. He hasn't gone from being a liberal to a libertarian to a neocon to a conservative and then an isolationist. His head is screwed on tight. His head is screwed on tight. I'm going to play for you a little bit later a few short clips of him and Catarleson, Chatsworth Catarleson. I noticed over at Mediaite, they took a Catarleson clip because Catarleson was trying to get in front of this disaster where Cruz ripped him a new one and twisted it with a headline. Questions being, how many people live in Iran? Why does that matter? You're a senator and you don't even know. What's the ethnic makeup of Iran? You know, Shia, you don't know and you're a senator? That's the kind of stupidity. And Mediaite thought that was great. Why? Because Mediaite is in the camp of the isolationists. Anything to attack Trump or to attack conservatives. They are in the camp of the isolationists. We tried to get one of the gentlemen on this program. What's his name again, Rich? I don't know. Colby Hall. I was going to have a professional discussion with him, as I told you yesterday. I wanted to ask him, what is your mission? I'm just curious. What do you do? These hyper ridiculous headlines that are aimed at getting clicks, these distorted stories. I see your staff. We've taken a little look at some of their backgrounds in the public record. Mostly are hardcore leftists, white male hardcore leftists. What is your mission? How are you any different than Media Matters? But he wouldn't come on. We tried to get the reporter for Politico who lied about me. She wouldn't answer. We tried to get the reporter for The Independent. She lied too. She wouldn't come on. We've tried to get the Marxist Islamists on this program. They won't come on. We've tried to get the Stalinists on this program. They won't come on. I don't need to debate other conservatives. I mean, I don't mind, but I don't need to give them a whoop ass. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at these people who I believe undermine our nation. But they won't come on. They're safe, you see, behind their press people, behind their computers, and so forth and so on.